participate in this year's African Leadership Gathering, which is hosted by the African Leadership Academy. I'm also excited about the theme that we have, which is trying to address global health equity, building solutions for crises that we cannot ignore. I'm looking forward to the conversations and also learning from others in terms of how we can find solutions to the barriers to global equity. Particularly today, I'm going to talk about vaccine equity, which is something that is close to the things that I am able to do. Now, before I can talk about vaccine equity, I would like to just give a definition of global health equity. So the definition for global health equity I have in mind, or the operation definition that I would be able to use, is that being defined as the absence of unfair or avoidable or remediable differences in health amongst population groups, be it social, economic, cultural, or otherwise, which means that a health intervention that is needed by an individual should be able to get to that individual regardless of their socio-economic and geographical status. And when we cascade that down to vaccine equity, what we are saying is that then a vaccine that is effective and useful should be able to be accessed or equitably distributed across the globe to be able to reach to the intended target population. And when we talk of vaccine equity, it's important because these vaccine preventable diseases, and some of them which are infectious, given the global village that we live in, if we don't distribute these effective interventions to every person that needs it, we would then be able to have a problem, because an epidemic in one area of the world can easily spread to the others, as we have seen in SARS-CoV-2 situation. But then before we talk about this vaccine, which we need to then be able to give to the individual, regardless of their socio-economic status, we need to understand that at the back end of this is the research and development. I think that the current landscape for research and development for vaccines is that high-income countries invest a lot in development of vaccines and also the technologies. And so given that, there are also issues around intellectual property that would then be able to, that we need to be able to address, because while you need to acknowledge the people who have developed these life-saving, whether it's solutions or vaccines or technologies to build and develop these interventions, we also need to be clear that we find a way in which we can be able to, that the intellectual property does not become a barrier or hinder health equity per se. And I know that colleagues either will talk about this or others have already spoken about this. So once we then get over this hurdle, we are then going to talk about mass production. And I think that there is an issue in terms of capacity. Lower income countries do not have capacity to be able to mass produce these vaccines. And so I think we need to be able to see how in the long term we can be able to start talking about developing capacity for low middle income countries to be able to develop capacity to develop or even mass produce vaccines. This might be small regional industries that will be able to at least make vaccines to be able to meet a region. And I think that for COVID-19, there is conversations around Pfizer being able to produce vaccines in South Africa in the not so distant future. So once then you tackle the issue of production, you also want to talk about the issue of distribution. So if production is localized in certain regions, then you have to talk about how do you move these vaccines to these other regions. And so issues around procurement and all these things need to be addressed. Once you get over that hurdle, you then go into the next issue, which is in country. Now that we have the vaccine has arrived in country, for example, here in Zambia, we want to say how do we get the vaccine to the intended person in the remotest area of the country. That then speaks to our cold chain capacity as a country, and then we need to be able to say how then do we overcome such a barrier. This means we need to think and expand the cold chain capacity and then be able to ensure that the person who needs the vaccine then gets it. Now, once we overcome the cold chain capacity and distribution issues around logistics, we have the vaccine at the person who intends to get the vaccine. The last hurdle is about vaccine confidence. The person, before the person accepts the vaccine, is the person confident enough in the product that you have? And this is what actually is linked to vaccine hesitancy, where people are not confident in the vaccine, then therefore they are hesitant to take it. Now, it doesn't matter what you would have done in the things that you've done in the past, whether you've addressed your IP issues, you've produced, you've even brought the vaccine to the individual. The last hurdle is actually also important to be able to be addressed. So, the challenge here about vaccine confidence is we are in a situation where the healthcare provider has a life-saving technology, if you like, or life-saving solution, but the recipient of that life-saving solution is not confident with the intervention. So they then either delay or may not be able to take it. Now, when we are dealing with people who need to then take the vaccine, and you have this situation, then it doesn't, then you will not be able to achieve your intended goal of controlling the epidemic. Now, what then we need to do is to think about how then do we address this issue. We need to understand that other people would want you to go back to each and every message that is written, that is misinforming the people and correcting the record. You want to be able to get to a point where then you can counter. But countering each and every message becomes reactionary and sometimes does not become very successful. And so, for us to build confidence, we need to understand that the people who are hesitant to take vaccines are hesitant because they have genuine concerns themselves around safety, around the efficacy of the vaccine, and also the speed with which the vaccine has been developed. And some people think, for example, the COVID-19 vaccine has been developed too quickly. And so people think maybe there were some issues. People cut certain corners to be able to get to the vaccine, and because they are driven by this profit motive, they may have not considered everything. And I think that to get over this, we need then to create a platform where we can be able to engage with the consumers of our health products, in this case the vaccine, so that in a way that there is respect for each and every view as it is expressed, and then the researchers or the healthcare provider is able to engage in a respectful manner. We are also open enough to describe what we have seen around the safety and whatever concerns. And then also be able to get to a point where we can also be empathetic to understand each other's position. I think it's also important that the recipient of the vaccine be empathetic to the developer or the healthcare provider in terms of what they want to achieve, but at the same time also the person who is providing the solution be empathetic to the recipient and be able to engage each other. And so we need to be able to build this. For example, here at the Center for Infectious Disease Research in Zambia, we have what we call community advisory boards. And these are a bridge between us, the researchers, or people providing interventions for certain diseases or health problems, are able to engage in the community. And because these community advisory boards have actually been in place, we use them for different interventions. And so when we want to start a clinical trial, for example, or roll out an intervention, it is this platform that we use. And because we have built confidence and these meetings and boards, when they sit with community members, the views of the people are respected, it's done in such a way that we are all seen as part of one continuum and all fighting one disease. And so no one sees each other as them versus us, and this is what we need to be able to do. And so we need to be able to then use these platforms and whatever they would look like in different settings to be able to reach as many stakeholders and continuously be mapping, because stakeholders will change over time. And then create these forum or places, be it on social media, to be able to constantly be able to engage with people. And so the challenge then is that us as community or healthcare providers need to change our approach in terms of communication, away from just messaging and crafting certain messages, but to get to engagement. And I think we can learn this from social scientists, from anthropologists, to see how best we can be able to achieve the engagement and also continuously sustain it. So in conclusion, I would like to say that if we cannot address vaccine confidence by building trust in these communities, it doesn't matter how much we can do around, dismantling IP, being able to produce and procure as many doses as we can, and they get into the country. As long as the people will be skeptical about taking the vaccines, then we will not be able to achieve what we need. So we need to be able to create this platform where we can engage with respect, we can engage with empathy and openness. And so once we are able to create confidence and build trust in the consumers of health products, then we should be able to move an inch closer to achieving global equity. So thank you, and I'm open now to, I'm ready to receive questions or comment, and indeed be able to engage in the wider conversation and debate around these themes. Thanks.